Hi, Keyanna. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time out of the crazy world that we live in right now to talk with us. Um,
Taking the time from staying home to have a conversation.
Somehow, with having to stay home, I find myself in a way busier than ever. So it's this weird contradictory that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Um, so I'm gonna dive right in and let all my audience get to know you. You have, from what I understand, a pretty varied past work-wise, and I would love to hear about your journey, how you kind of found your way through all these other things to where you are today.
Sure. I don't really know where to start because I do feel like I've done a lot. I think, like most creatives, I've had a lot of passions. And so I've kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. But how I got into photography specifically was kind of a little bit of an accident. Um, I live in a very small rural town. And when I graduated college, I actually went to school for broadcast journalism. And I moved back home after college and I realized there wasn't a lot of creative opportunities here. And so I started my blog, which is Easton Lane. And one of the things I wanted to do with my blog was kind of mix my love for interior design and fashion and lifestyle. And I realized I needed to learn how to use a camera. So my husband actually does some videography work and he had I think it was like a 5D Mark II at the time or something. And I just picked it up and taught myself how to use it. And then I started looking for homes that I could do home tours in for my blog. So I would go and find my friend's house or something and take some pictures of it and do a home tour on my blog. And that kind of turned into a few realtors and builders and stuff seeing my work on my blog. And they were asking, oh, can you take pictures of our listings and stuff like that? And again, it was just a hobby that kind of turned into a career, but I started to work with a few realtors and kind of got into real estate photography. And then that eventually led into architecture and interiors.
Yeah, wow, you've kind of dabbled, kind of danced around all of it before actually diving in, huh?
Yeah, like I said, I went to school for broadcast journalism. So initially my dream was to do be like a HGTV host because I love design. And I also love the production side of television. And so I kind of the closest I got to that was kind of worked in radio a little bit. But then from there, I've done everything from being a real estate agent to doing a lot of writing for some magazines. I've done styling, I've done interior design and photography. So I'm still learning how to merge all my passions into one unit, which is kind of where my blog kind of came into play. But I'm now seeing how all those little elements have actually helped me in photography.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if we end up seeing you on HGTV one day, to be
Thank
honest.
you.
I would not be shocked at all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's always been a dream of mine.
Yeah. Um, are are you still, I saw on Easton Lane that you also offer design services as part of it. Are you still kind of involved in that? Are you maintaining the blog? And how has that played a role in your interior photography?
So Easton Lane is kind of on a little bit of a hiatus right now. I'm actually planning to relaunch it in the fall, and I'm working on redesigning my website and everything like that. So Easton Lane was always meant to be my creative outlet for design and home, and then my photography business is actually called Key Photography, kind of playing off my name, Keyanna Bowen Photography. And so those are always kind of two separate entities. But then I started to realize that when people went to Easton Lane and saw my photography work and stuff, they would ask me about photography. Or when people went to Key Photography and saw my photography work, they would ask me about design. So I'm realizing that I need to kind of merge those two together in a more comprehensive way. So that's kind of what I'm working on now with the relaunch, where everything will kind of be under one house. But to answer your question, yeah, I think with Easton Lane right now, I am kind of offering design services, more so just e-design at the moment. I'm not taking on any new clients probably until the fall or winter, just because I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of things with traveling for photography and things of that nature. So in the fall and winter, you'll probably see a lot more activity on the blog and also with a few design projects I'm working on behind the scenes right now.
Oh, exciting. And it's going to be merged into one sort of
Yeah.
brand,
So
one.
everything will be Easton Lane. And so it will encompass interior design, it will encompass interior photography and styling. And then it will also probably encompass like content creation for brands, because I do get brands who reach out to me to do partnerships and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. Nice. So you're going
Thanks.
to stay kind of all over the interior home design world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for so long, I've tried to kind of niche down to just one thing. And I don't know, maybe I call myself like a serial-preneur, where it's just like all my passions just keep crying out. So I can't really just say, oh, I'm only an interior photographer. Like, I think if you look on my Instagram, it's like interior photographer and design blogger. Like, I don't feel comfortable calling myself a like interior designer, because I didn't go to school for design. It's just been a passion of mine. So I'm more of a design enthusiast. But yeah, I'm just realizing that it's not always about just specializing in one thing. If you can kind of learn how to merge all your passions together, it kind of gives you a different point of view and allows you to bring more to the table to those things that you're doing.
Nice. I love that. As someone who has a really varied past, I love that too. It's definitely, I feel like eventually, if you're dabbling in a lot of things, you are going to land in something that somehow blends it all together. So
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of that. Um, with design, you're always hearing about things being trends, like passing trends. Are you seeing that with interior photography? Have you seen anything kind of trending that you either love or hate, or are happy to see go, or are looking for?
Um, okay, that's a really good question. So I think one of the good things that is trending is that I think pretty much every designer is realizing they need professional photography. Like, I think there was a time where they would try to like get away with, maybe iPhone photo or something like that. I don't think there's any designer now that doesn't know they need professional photography and is willing to make that type of investment. So I think that's a trend that's great for us. Another trend that I've been seeing that I kind of have mixed feelings about is like, I would like to hear your opinion on this, because I know you have presets, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of people who are making presets for their photographs. And a lot of these people seem to be coming from like maybe the wedding portrait photography world. And then I'm curious how that is going to translate to like interior photographers, because I know just starting out, when you don't really have your editing aesthetic yet, it's easy to like just want to slap on a preset or something. But I think it's so important to try to like find your specific look in your images. So I love the idea of presets for like designers who want to amp up their photos, and even just starting out to add that extra layer. But I think it's still so important that you find your own editing style before you kind of use those presets to slap on, especially if they're coming from like people who don't have an interior background. Because if you use like a preset that is not specific for interiors, it's going to change your color cast and things like that, how it tweaks things. So I think as a new photographer, that was one of the things that I kind of got sucked into, like looking for presets and stuff like that. And I wasn't able to really like nail in my own design or editing style.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things I'm trying to work on now, is like really finding my aesthetic with my editing.
Yeah. Um, I think you're on a good track finding your aesthetic, because I definitely see a style consistent through your work. Yeah, with presets, one of the things I always say when I talk about presets is there is no magic button. There's no
Right.
one-click solution. I know that it's kind of like a popular thing to say. It's a one-click solution to your photo editing. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't exist. Like, every photo is different, every space is different, lighting situations. And the presets that I have were specifically made for spaces, but I always say that they're a starting point. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like for when you're very early in the process, they're what you start with, and then you're tweaking and you're making it your own,
Hmm.
because there's no one-click solution, right? Because there's no one answer for that. It's like one size fits all.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think it depends on your workflow. So I think presets are super helpful for real estate or vacation rentals,
Yes,
because
for
like
sure.
you batch edit, you go really quick through it, versus if you're doing architectural or interior, it's much more like fine tuning. It's very specific to that photo. You're doing a lot of retouching. It's much more hands on. So it just depends. But I feel like they're a good starting point and almost like a little security blanket for people who are just starting. But it's definitely a thing to be careful with, because, yeah, there's a lot of folks out there trying to sell it like this is the answer to all your editing problems.
Right.
And it like that doesn't exist. It really isn't. Um,
Yeah, and I definitely agree. Like for real estate, I think it's fine. Um, and I'm more so just speaking to the beginner out there who is like trying to learn how is this done, like what is the industry standard and stuff like that. That presets aren't necessarily the industry standard, but when you see them like, everybody's selling them and stuff, people might get sucked in to think, oh, like everybody's just out here using presets to edit their photos or something like that.
yeah, no, it's never quite that simple.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving on to your marketing, you're kind of early-ish in your career with interior photography, but you've been in it, I think, for a couple of years. So, what sort of marketing approaches have worked the best for your photography business?
So yeah, I still am very much a beginner in this field. And starting out, I did a lot of real estate photography, which I know a lot of people typically start out that way. I kind of had a foot in the door with realtors because when I graduated college, I came home and one of the things I did was got my real estate license. And so I worked with a real estate firm for a few years right after college before I transitioned into doing photography work. And so when I started doing photography, I had some, like I said, I had some realtors who I knew who reached out to me asking me to shoot their listings. And then I also had a firm that I reached out to do, and I don't know if this is everywhere, but in our area, pretty much all the real estate firms have what's called sales meetings. Usually it's like a certain day of the week and all the realtors come in and they usually like to have some speaker. Sometimes it's like a loan officer or something that has to do with real estate. But I asked if I could speak at one of their sales meetings, and from there I got a ton of clients for real estate. So that's something that people just starting out, if you don't have like a portfolio or images that you feel comfortable with marketing or putting out flyers or anything like that, maybe knock on some of the doors of the real estate companies and see if you can speak at one of their sales meetings just to get your name and face out there. As far as the marketing I'm doing now, quite honestly, it's very zero. Like I said, I'm working on rebranding and relaunching my site, which once that happens, then I'll definitely do more of like a legit marketing strategy for my photography. But so far it's been all organic and just from like word of mouth and referrals.
That's great. That's the best kind of client referral to get, is when it's completely organic.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it tends to be also the longest lasting.
Yeah.
It's already a warm lead. They already kind of know about you. There's some connection. So that's great. Um, as far as styling goes, so we're going to start diving into kind of your shoot process.
Okay.
Um, so I know a lot of interior photographers, kind of part of what we do is we go in and we kind of help shush the pillows and shift little things around. I would imagine if you've already been on the design end, that you probably are a little bit more vocal about that. So how do you handle styling? Are you more hands-on, or are you trying to give the designer space?
So I would say I'm more hands-on. Unfortunately, I haven't like been around other interior photographers like on their shoot to know how hands-on or hands-off they are. But personally speaking, one of the things that I do offer is like an a la carte styling add-on to my photography service.
Okay.
So if the design, because design and styling is really two different things, and which is why a lot of designers hire out a stylist, because adding that extra layer and telling the story of the space is really a unique skill set. And so one of the things that I do offer is like an a la carte styling service that they can add on, where I will handle bringing in any props or accessories that would be needed for the shoot. And if they don't do the a la carte service, then when I get to the shoot, I'm very much vocal. um, which I think, pretty much all photographers probably are, based on, what would actually make this photograph look better. But I do think I probably might be a little bit more opinionated or suggestive than someone who doesn't have a design background, just because I really want this space to be showcased in a way that really exemplifies what the designer wanted. So one of the processes I go through is scouting. I almost always try to have some type of scouting day with the designer. If they're not local, then sometimes we just do, send me pictures, and then we'll have a phone call that probably could last anywhere from, half hour to an hour, specifically about art direction and styling.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about, any additional props that I would suggest they should bring, or things that I feel like is lacking, that they might not have thought about. And so that way the designer really has some good things and ideas that they can bring to the shoot.
Awesome. I love that you differentiated between designing and styling. I don't think a lot of people make that differentiation, but you're absolutely right. It's the difference between designing a room for somebody to live in it versus what it's going to look like through a lens.
Right.
And yeah, I love that distinction. You're spot on with that. So when you first arrive at a shoot, let's say for example you're not hired to do the add-on for styling. Um, what kind of process do you go through? Do you have kind of like some process where you first look at a space a certain way to kind of get yourself in that mental place?
Yeah, so when I first arrive, what I first like to do is I usually just maybe bring in my, Pelican case that has my camera. I don't load in all my equipment first. So I'll just walk in, I'll, say my hellos or whatever, and I'll have the designer give me a tour of the complete house or whatever spaces we're going to be shooting. And then from there, based on lighting and things like that, we'll decide which room is best to start in. And then I also like to just bring my iPhone around with me while she's giving me a tour of the home, and just like compose a few shots on my iPhone versus
Mhm.
like trying to set it up with my camera first. And
Yeah,
then so we basically do like a shot list on my iPhone for the space, and then I'll actually, set my camera up. And usually during that time when I'm bringing in all my equipment and setting up, they're doing any final zhuzhing and styling and things of that nature. So that's kind of my process, is just kind of doing a walkthrough first, taking some quick test shots on my iPhone to see, what would be best for the shot, and then actually getting the shot with my actual camera.
yeah. That's a great idea to do kind of a quick walkthrough with your iPhone and kind of build that shot list
Yeah.
before you even set up. I bet that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I actually learned, like, most of the things, my processes I learned is from assisting. I've, well, initially I wanted to assist any and every photographer that I could that have been, veterans in the industry, specifically photographers who have been published with like national shelter magazines. So I can really like kind of see someone who is kind of at the top of their game, what their process is like. And then one of the photographers that I do assist, that was kind of her process that I kind of took on, because honestly, and this, which is why I love what you're doing. I mean, there isn't a handbook, out there for us all to read and figure out how to do this thing. A lot of it is just researching or learning through experience. And so being able to have the experience as an assistant has really kind of taught me some things quicker than usual, and how I wanted my process to go as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and even I feel like even when you're learning from somebody, people tend to do things differently, right? Because they kind of find their own way of doing it. And so there's also a little bit of learning, like which one of those ways works best for you too.
Exactly. Which
Yeah.
is why I still assist, and I'm still looking for established photographers to assist, because I know I know everybody's process is different. And
Mhm.
I'm the kind of person who, like, I want to know as much as I can about something, and as many different ways as there's out there, and then, like you said, kind of tweak fit my needs.
Mhm.
So that's one of my number one recommendations, whether you're just starting out or whether you feel like you're kind of established, if you can still even just have a conversation with other photographers out there just to see like what other people are doing, because you don't know what you don't know. So, once you kind of find out some information, it might really add to the way you do things.
Yeah, totally. That's a great idea. Yeah, and I don't think anybody really tends to think of assisting when it comes to interior photography. You always hear about assisting when it comes to like weddings or maybe
Hmm.
portraits, but no one really talks about it for architecture or interiors. So that's a great idea. Um, as far as the gear or apps or tools, like do you have any favorites that are your go-to or anything that you're experimenting with that's newer for you?
Um, I'm a Canon girl, so I use the Canon 5D. I love the 24 to, like, I love prime lenses, but I will say that like my go-to lens right now is the 24 to 70, only because like it allows me to shoot so much quicker than having to keep swapping out lenses. So if I'm in like on a shoot where time is kind of getting tight, I'll just throw on my 24 to 70 to get those last few. And I actually, that was a lens that was recommended. I don't know if I'm gonna ruin her last name, but Tessa Nasdot, or
Yeah, I
she does
follow.
all of Amber Interiors photos, and she's a great photographer in the LA area. That's one of her like go-to lenses. And when I was just starting out, that was like, oh, okay, I'm going to get that lens. But yeah, it's a really great lens. So that's kind of a good solution for someone who doesn't want to invest in a whole bunch of prime lenses.
Mhm.
The 24 to 70 is a nice zoom lens. And then Capture One is my go-to now. My workflow used to be Lightroom to Photoshop to Lightroom,
Mhm.
but I just started to actually do like any type of editing in Capture One, retouching in Photoshop back to Capture One. And I actually noticed, like, at first I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. I was like, oh, Lightroom's still cool. But I mean, Capture One, I think their precision and just how intricate like their tools are, I feel like I'm able to get a lot more out of my photos when I use Capture One for my workflow. And then I use that for tethering too. So before I would just like use Capture One to tether on set, and then I would throw everything into Lightroom and use Photoshop in Lightroom. But now I'm strictly kind of Capture One, Photoshop.
Huh. I'm gonna have to give Capture One a shot because I haven't tried it. I'm very used to Lightroom and I've been happy with it, but you've got me curious now.
I know, and that was one of the things that I wasn't going to. I mean, I used it for tethering, but I didn't really think I needed to use it for editing. And like Lightroom was what I started with, and I didn't really have like the time to learn a new, system, which I'm still, learning it. But I saw the photographer who I assist. She uses Capture One, and then her workflow is Capture One into Photoshop, and she was like, yeah, you should just like take one photo and put it in Capture One and do some tweaks to it, and then do the same thing in Lightroom and see like what photo you like best. And I just feel like I get more precision with Capture One, so
Hmm.
that's kind of my go-to now.
I'm
And then
I'm gonna try that
another
comparison. I'm gonna try that Capture One to Lightroom comparison. You got me curious now. Sorry, go ahead.
Um, and then another thing why I wasn't like amped about Capture One is because before I think it was like 300 or 399 or something to buy, but now they have subscription, so it's like $30 a month or something like that, which is way more cost effective if you just wanted, like, if you're not shooting a lot and you don't want to make a huge investment in like the full program, you can just do like a monthly subscription or something like that. But my other go-to, it's kind of not even a tool, it's kind of like a hack.
Oh, I love hacks. Go.
Okay. So obviously, like how important controlling light is, in a shoot. You can use diffusers, which I have like probably 3 or 4 different size diffusers that I might use on a shoot to block light or diffuse the light. But another hack to that is plastic shower curtains. So white plastic shower curtains that are like, I don't know, $1.99 at the dollar store or super cheap. Just buy like 3 or 4 of them. And what's cool about that is like you can just tape them up in the window, or you can tape them to the outside of the window, and they just create a really nice diffused light, and they really help with color cast. So if I'm in a house that has white walls but a whole bunch of greenery outside, and like there's a lot of color cast of green or something on the walls,
Yeah.
instead of using my diffuser, which can kind of only get one section, you know, at a time, I'll just tape up the shower curtains over the window, and it will like make this perfectly diffused light and get rid of the color cast. And then of course you just take them down to get your shot for the window exposure like
Yeah.
you normally would. But it's a cheap little hack that can help with color cast or help with light blocking and manipulation.
I'm all for cheap hacks that work. And I love that one. I had not heard that one before, but I love it. I'm literally going to go to like the dollar store and look for cheap shower curtains now.
Yeah, just make sure they're like the plastic. It's like the disposable plastic kind, white.
The liners that go inside,
Yeah,
right?
the
Yeah.
liners. Yep.
Yeah, I'm totally going to look for that. I hadn't heard of that before. I love it. Um, okay, so let's finish up with what sort of advice do you have for especially other women of color who are starting out in this niche?
I think my number one advice would be to see if you can assist an established photographer. That's kind of how I started in real estate, and shooting real estate is completely different than shooting interiors. And I didn't know anything about, you know, how long a shoot should be or what the process was. And I pretty much learned all that through assisting an established photographer who specializes in interiors and architecture. So I would definitely recommend assisting, which can be difficult. I started off pro bono. I was just like, I'm just trying to get some learning experience. Can I just shadow you on set one day? And they were like, yeah. And then from there, it actually led into them hiring me for shoots. So assisting would definitely be one of the ways I would recommend to get started in the industry and to really learn. Um, the second thing I would say is like establish a relationship with a newbie designer. So a lot of times when you're looking for work, a lot of the designers who you're probably following or admire already have photographers or might want to use someone who's a little bit more established in the industry. But I've been able to work with a lot of designers who are newer and just starting out, and we've kind of grown together, and it allows me to get that work for my portfolio and learn without so much stress, I guess, as it would be if it was a designer who's like, you know, 10 years in the game and is used to working with someone who has all their stuff together. So we kind of have that learning curve and respect for each other. And then eventually, you know, she might turn out to be the next Amber Interiors, you know, you never know. And it's kind of one of those things, like once a designer finds their photographer, they pretty much stick with the same person. So if you can find someone who's just starting out like you are and kind of grow together, I think that's a great way to start as well.
That's awesome advice. Yeah, because then, you know, if you grow together, that loyalty is going to be there, and you're kind of together for life after,
Yeah, for sure.
after going through those early years. So yeah, that's great advice. I love that. So that's all I had for you today. You gave us so much great information. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking time to talk with us, and it's been awesome hearing about your journey. It feels like it's been different viewpoints and different advice than what I've seen a lot out there, and I love that. I love kind of getting new perspectives, and loving the shower curtain tip. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah, it will change. It will change. I mean, like I said, what the only other alternative is to probably get a whole bunch of diffusers and try to like stack them. It's mainly for color cast. Like that's where I realized, okay, this really helps improve the image because I can just tape up the shower curtains across the windows and easy peasy. And they're super cheap. Like they're like $1.99 or something. So
That's the thing. Sometimes the best solution are like the simplest, cheapest thing out there, and it's just, why complicate it by buying all sorts of extra stuff you don't need to.
right.
So yeah, I love that. All right, thank you, Keyanna. I'm going to link to your website, your Instagram, make sure that people know where to find you, and I'm excited for some new faces to know who you are and get to see your work and get to see you grow more. So thanks again for sitting down and talking with us, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I love what you're doing over at the Grove, and I'm just so excited. If anyone has any questions or ever wants to reach out, like I'm an open book. So thank
Awesome.
you.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right. Take care, and we'll be in touch online.
Okay, bye.
Bye.